How to read the textual apparatus of a Greek New Testament using the Nestle-Aland 28th edition at Ephesians 1:1 and focusing on the problem of NFSO, or in Ephesus. The first thing to notice about NFSO is that it's surrounded by a few different symbols. The square and the backslash are actually related to one another. They surround a phrase, or at least more than one word that has been omitted in some witnesses. So if you ever get the omission of just one word, it'll be a small circle rather than a square, and the square is always followed by the backslash to show you what words are in question for a possible omission. And then the other symbols, the square brackets here, aren't necessarily tied to every textual variant or every problem. They're just showing you that the editors are unsure. There's some uncertainty about these words because it's a pretty tricky textual problem. So if we trace the square down to the footnotes, we'll see it here. In this sample, I've excerpted a little bit from the apparatus. I'm not showing you the evidence for all the other text problems in verse 1. So the ... so it shows you I'm just going to NFSO specifically. And so the Nestle-Aland gives you the support for the omission first. And the first thing to show up for the omission is P46, or Papyrus 46, which very early witness to the Pauline epistles. It lacks NFSO. It just goes right from tois ousin to kai pistois. Then Codex Sinaiticus, or Aleph, and it's an asterisk, which means that it's the original hand or the original writing of the scribe. And that implies that there's going to be a corrected version later in the equation somewhere. And then the next one is B, or Vaticanus. Sometimes you'll see it as 03 written. And again, it's also an uncorrected reading. It's the original hand of the scribe at the time of writing in the 4th century. And then you get two minuscules, 6 and 1739. And then what's left here is a reference to Marcion, the 2nd century heretic, who is a witness to the omission of NFSO. But we don't have his works directly. We have them mediated through Tertullian and Epiphanius. And that's what the T and the E stand for. So if you look at the introduction to the Nestle-Aland, you can find page 81 that specifies we have a witness to Marcion through Tertullian and Epiphanius, and he is a early testimony of the omission of NFSO. Then they give you a CF inscription. This links us up to the line just above where it says inscriptio, or inscription. That means like the title at the beginning of a book. There is a replacement of the title. So rather than to the Ephesians, we have to the Laodiceans, and then vel means or. The spelling is slightly different in another version, but it's the same idea. It's that according to Marcion, the title to the book is actually to the Laodiceans, not to the Ephesians. So this little note here is just sending you back up to that related textual issue. But again, that Marcion witness comes through Tertullian and Epiphanius rather than by himself. The broken vertical line means we've stopped talking about the evidence for the omission of NFSO, and now we're going to discuss the evidence for what's printed in the text, TXT. And so the evidence that supports the presence of NFSO is the corrected version of Codex Sinaiticus, or Aleph. Now, if you look on page 59 in the introduction, you'll see that they give you actually a date for the corrector of Sinaiticus that they label 2, and they put it in the 7th century roughly. Similar is B, or Vaticanus, the corrected reading. This is not the asterisk reading. It's not the original hand, the original scribe. It's a later corrector has added in NFSO. And again, on page 59, Vaticanus with a 2 refers to a scribal correction in either the 6th or the 7th century. Other witnesses are A and D, F, G, K, L, P, C. All of these are majuscules that support the inclusion of NFSO up in the text. One more majuscule is 0278. And then what follows to the end of the line are all minuscules or minuscules, a whole list of them. On the final line, you get 2464, and then the majority M, which means the great majority of Greek witnesses altogether have NFSO or in Ephesus. Careful with the last 3 here. LATT means something specific, not just Latin, but if you go to page 69 of the introduction, it tells you that LATT means the entire Latin tradition. So there are various categories of Latin tradition, the Vulgate and Old Latin and so on. LATT means the entire Latin tradition. Similar with SY, there are varieties of versions of the Syriac, but SY means the entire Syriac tradition, and you can see that on page 70. And then CO, once again, is specific. It means all the Coptic witnesses, not just certain dialects of Coptic, and you can see that on page 74 of the introduction. So just to summarize and clarify, in Ephesians 1:1, when we focus on this particular textual problem, we see that it deals with the omission of more than one word, and the editors are marking the fact that there is some uncertainty about the real wording here. They can't quite make a firm decision, and so there's some uncertainty marked by the brackets. There is some support for the omission of that phrase, and it's very early support for the omission with papyri, with Marcion, with Aleph and B. And then everything after that gives the support for the inclusion of those words in the text, and that includes all of this material here.